Okay, Dan, this is for you. I'm going to hit the letter P, and as you can see, I have the pen tool. So the first thing I'm doing, I'm just going to show you some basics about the pen tool. If I click and I click, I get a straight line. Okay. If I click and I click and now I drag, see that line starts to curve. And I can make that line curve more. I can change the direction of the curve. I can do all kinds of fun things with the line. And then when I let go, it holds that curve. If I hold Option, I can tuck this little tail in. Why is that useful? Because right now it wants to curve in the direction of that tail, but if I want to take it into this direction, I can do another line, and I can smoothly start curving, and then Option. Oh, shoot, that one's being funky because I went off the edge. So you can see, you can make very smooth curves. One thing that once you've got these, you're like, all right, so what am I going to do with that awesome curve? Well, I could complete this, and I can make a selection and select pixels. Or I can come over to my paths, and depending on whatever my last brush was, I can make a stroke the path. So let's see, I'm going to say with the pencil tool, which would have been whatever I did last. I stroked it, and it should have been with black, and if I come off the path, you can see I now have this nice delicate line. So that's the pen tool quickly. So let me just show you the pen tool when being used for cutting out. So I'm going to just put a different color layer behind the car. So when we do the cutout, you'll see what happens. Pen tool is good when you're cutting out things like this, where it's got straight defined edges or curves, but they're not hair. Hair it's not meant for. And also you can see here, I can see that the car is extending here, but there's no selection tool that's going to find that. So let's just say I'm not going to grab the reflections, I'm just going to grab the car. So I'm going to tick and see how that's a straight line, and now I'm just going to slowly drag it and let go. Now because my end is going in the same direction, I can just click and now click and click. And actually, I'm not sure what's going on here with this. I don't know if that's I think that's a shadow, so I'm not going to grab it. So I'm just going to keep clicking. Now, when I don't really know what kind of angle I need, you can also just do a bunch of little dots and it'll create, see? So if in the beginning you're like, well, I don't know what to do with this thing, you can do this. And you're still going to get a nice vector selection and nice straight lines. So, I mean, that works. It's not how I do it anymore, but it is how I started off using the pen tool. And so now I'm going to see I've got a curve here. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag. And I can see that that's a little out of range, but I'm going to fix that later. So I'm coming to the edge here. I'm just going to kind of flick it over here. And just keep clicking and dragging. And this is precise. I mean, it's your fastest way to cut out something like a car that's a light colored car on a light colored background. And so one of the things about this particular car, okay, so see it. There we go, I got it. Now I don't want to go, I want to come back to here, so I'm going to hit Option, and you see how that becomes a little caret, and bring that in, and now I can, so, okay. This is the basics of cutting out the car. Now I want you to think about something. The blur is less here, and it's definitely more blurred here. Like this person that shot it was at a lower angle. This part is more in focus. This part is less focused. So you're just like, well, if I'm going to turn this into a selection, like what blur do I use? And what I would do is I'll use about a 3 pixel blur, which will be good for here, but it won't be blurry enough for here. And then I'll fix it in the mask. The other thing is if I hope I do this right. If I hold Command and double click this point, it reactivates them, and I'm holding the Command, and I can see I can kind of pull that one back in. So now if I right click in the middle, I can make a selection. I'm going to choose 3 pixels. I don't usually do more than 3. Say OK, and now I have my selection. I'm going to add a layer mask, and it kind of gives me an idea of how good my selection is. And then I'm going to take my lasso tool by holding L, and this whole area is entirely too sharp. So I am selecting a layer mask, and I'm going to just blur out my selection. So because I'm doing it on the mask, it's going to open, see, it's going to give me a nice, and because I also used a pen tool, starting with a really, really nice clean edge. So I'm going to grab this, and I like to do it in little sections because it gives me more control. Blur, Gaussian blur, and that's probably more than I need, so I'll pull that back. Nope, nope, nope. That looks pretty good. And so all I'm blurring is the edges of the mask. So I could be pretty sloppy, but that was a little too sloppy. I'm going to hold Shift and get this whole thing. Okay, and filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and that actually looks pretty good. So I've got the car cut out a little bit more precisely up here. I've got the car more loosely cut out here. My next step would be, I can stay on my mask, I hit P, I need to get the windows. And sure, you can use magic, you can use all kinds of ways to do this. And I kind of missed this corner, so I'm going to hold Command, double click, kind of pull that corner. I hold the Command while I'm doing it, and there we go. And now I'm just going to right click, make selection, 3 pixels, edit, fill it with black. And then do the same thing over here. Command D, there we go. So my favorite time to use the pen tool is on these selections where you really need your human eye, because you try to select, like here, there's a highlight. I want to keep that highlight. If I tried to use any other type of selection tool, it's not going to know how to see that. Make this selection, edit, fill with black, Control D, Command D, whatever it is, and then get this guy. I also use this when I really, really want to have a precise, nice selection. Hit fill black. This isn't great right now. I mean, if I was going to work on this car, I would have to do a whole lot more work, and seriously, putting it on black is probably not the smartest. And if I put it on like a lighter color, which makes more sense for the highlights, you can start to see it looks a lot. I mean, just there, that looks better. And that's one of the key things to composites, is that if you can put a light thing on a dark background, but it takes a whole lot more work because especially something shiny like a car. But this was just to show how the pen tool works, and you can basically, and I'm just going to really quick just, oops, Control Z, add another layer on top. And go back to the pen tool. And so as you're tracing, see that this is the greatest. So like even if you're making curves, if you're following curves, this is where I'm just dragging. So it's just click and drag. And the thing is, if you want to like, okay, so I'm clicking and I drag this, and now I want to change directions. That's when you take your option and you move your little tag to that direction. And then you can keep going. and then I want to change directions. I'm going to hit my option. I'm going to move my little tag to that direction. So I hope, and then the other thing, like I was saying, is if you really just do this until you're comfortable with it. It won't be as smooth as when you pull and drag, but it'll work. And we can now see in paths. I'm going to stroke the path. And this time I'm going to use the brush. It's going to look weird. And say okay. And whatever my last brush was is following the path, the stroke. And this could be useful if you were doing, maybe you had a brush with leaves or chain. You could literally create that pattern repeatedly along your path. So that's what that does. All right, I hope that helped. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments.